Monaco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I've decided to do a live stream this afternoon. It's just after 2 p.m. London. I know it's earlier than usual, but nothing better to do at the moment. I'm on my own at home. My wife's gone out with some friends for lunch. So Billy and I are home. Yeah, I'll just wait a little bit for people to come up, to show up. The title of the live stream is Has China Learned from Its Paper Money History? And hi, what a shambles. Is the volume okay? Can you guys tell me if the volume is okay? I'm using my new microphone. I've been reading a book. Afternoon, Sanjit. Nice to see you. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I've been reading this book, which I got about 10 years ago, Fiat Paper Money by Ralph T. Foster, The History and Evolution of Our Currency. And it was a friend of mine from MF Global, where I was a broker, futures and options broker, a guy that I talked into buying precious metals. I converted him. He's a gold bug as well. He's still in the city, and he bought this book, had it signed by the author, and gave it to me. So it was nice. And I started reading it again. And the first chapter is about the birth of paper money, and it was in China. And it was over 1,000 years ago. So the Chinese have had experience with paper money, and it always ends in failure. And that's what I want to talk about. And why is that relevant for today? Well, because I think, as the subtitle of the live stream says, have they learned about their past, the Chinese? And is that why they're buying a lot of gold? Because if they're going to have a very strong currency, if they want to have a reserve currency, they should back it by gold. So that's why. And I'll take up people's questions as well. We've got 32 people on, 2 thumbs up. Maybe we should get some more. So Advice Guru, hi Advice Guru. Calvin Cooper, good morning, Mary. Looks like China is going to send troops into Hong Kong. Yeah, they have said they might to keep order in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China. So China has, how can I say, power over Hong Kong. I'll type the name of the book, Fiat Paper Money. There's the book there. Will the Fed lower interest rate in their next meeting? I think they will cut by 25 basis points this Wednesday. The meeting is a 2-day meeting. It starts on Tuesday. And yes, I think they will cut. Only my POV, I'd be interested who ruled China when the paper money was started. Well, I'll tell you. Let's have a look. So Szechuan, birthplace of money, paper money, Southwest China. So basically it was the Sung dynasty. The Sung dynasty started the paper money. And in China, copper, silver. Well, there are copper coins. There are silver bars. They didn't use silver coins. And they also had iron because copper sometimes was in short supply, so they used iron. There was an exchange rate. And as with paper money, it was a good way to, how it was a convenience. They did it for convenience. But as usually happens, governments abuse paper money. It actually started out with 16 private families in southwest China, southern China during the Sung dynasty, and that was from around 1000 to 1126 AD. The government took over, of course, because these families started issuing too many receipts. There wasn't enough of the metal, and it's always the way it ends. And then the Mongols, they invaded southern China, and they adopted also paper money. And just show you the map here. You have the Sung Empire. Here, they started paper money. And then actually the Qin, I'm sorry, it's not the Mongols. The Qins, they came to the north and they took over the Sung. The Sung were driven south, and both Sung and Qin dynasties used paper money. And then the Mongols came and they started using paper money. But what is interesting is these charts here. This is during the Qin dynasty from 1153 to 1233. You can see that the paper money for about 60 years held its value quite well. And then all of a sudden it just dropped when they abused the system. Here we go. There you go. That was under the Qin. And also the same thing happens. And it's what's happening in the US, it's what's happening in the UK. And this took many years to happen because people in the beginning, they had confidence in the paper because there was backing. You could, how can I say, convert the paper into metal. At a certain point, because of wars and a lot of spending, there wasn't any more metal backing it. Inflation went up. And this is what we've had since 1971 around the world. So, and reading the Chinese experiment, these things took about 60 to 70 years for confidence to be completely lost. So I think the Chinese, will have to see if they've learned. I think they must have learned from their past experiences, how paper money is, in a way, it's convenient. It's very convenient, but it always leads to abuse. Water Shambles, do we really want China to take over? Will they bully and abuse that status? Well, it's not a matter of whether we want them to take over. It's reality. They've got 1.4 billion people. They've liberated their economy in relative terms. Up until 35 years ago, it was centrally run. There was no market. It was hardcore communism, and they've adopted kind of a state capitalism. So it's not a matter of whether we want them to take over. I don't think they want to take over. They just want to prosper and deal with other countries. The reason why they're building their military is because I think the Americans, unfortunately, and I have to say this, Americans have been bullying the whole world, especially in the last 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And by Americans, I don't mean the general public. I mean the people in charge, the deep state. So it's not surprising that countries like Russia and China are looking to protect themselves and to fortify their defenses, because there's a bigger bully out there, in my opinion. Sarah says, Sarah Stewart, thank you for the live stream. Yeah, cheers from my garden, RJ McShane. Good morning, Mario and Billy from Pablo. Hi, No, nice to see you. It's a lot cooler here, by the way, now. Last week was really hot, almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Today is much cooler. It's under 70, or it's around 18, 20 degrees. A bit of a breeze, more like the English summer. I love Jalala. Don't you believe America should be strong to prevent more chaos? I actually think America, the deep state, they have created a chaos. I think what we need is a multipolar world where nations respect each other and trade with each other, where there's sound money, just like within your own country. The government has to respect the general public. They have to serve the public. And I think nations have to respect each other. And right now, unfortunately, America's using its status as a world power to bully everyone around with sanctions. They're using the dollar weapon. But I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. We've seen with Instex that has been developed between the EU and Iran. You see that the Russians are involved now, and you can see that many other countries, the non-aligned movement, they're looking to cooperate with each other and use their own currencies for bilateral trades. So I think, the U.S. is hurting itself by doing that. Instead of trying to cooperate with every country, letting other countries sort out their own problems and not trying to impose their order on other countries. It's like I'm living in my house here. I've got no mortgage. I own the house. I wouldn't like my next door neighbor to come and tell me what to do. And that's the same thing. That's unfortunately what the United States is doing. Someone said here they don't believe there's a deep state, but I believe there is. So is gone. I'm not too sure about Trump. I think he's an instrument of the deep state as well. I think circus is all it is. It's circus and distraction. Same thing in the UK. All the Brexit distraction. They're still in charge. Sanjit Neogi, I agree with you, Mara. Yeah, unfortunately, it's the Anglo-American Empire. Rican, Eric Sprott says gold to 1700 next month. Greetings from Belgium. Yeah, that's possible. I mean, we broke over a month ago now that 1375 resistance. We did retest it. The low was 1381 recently, and we're staying above 1400. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be next month, but there isn't that much resistance anymore after 1375. So he could be right. Just have a drink here. I got a coffee with my end of Fed mug. Yes, Sanjit, multipolar world. I saw there was a non-aligned movement meeting actually in Caracas, Venezuela. The non-aligned movement, that started out during the Cold War. There were countries that were neither aligned to the Soviets or to the Americans. And even the Russians now, they went as an observer to Caracas. And I listened to their deputy foreign minister giving an interview to a reporter from the Gray Zone. And he was talking exactly about what we've talked about in these live streams and in the videos, that the US is using the dollar as a weapon, and that they're actually speeding up the process of that other countries are going to try to find alternatives. And it's no surprise that Russia's been buying so much gold, so has China. So Poland has started buying gold. So yeah, I think gold will be, again, an important part of the monetary system. Hi, Jeff. Nice to see you. I love Jella. Catholic Church is not a deep state. I think they are part of it, the Catholic Church. I saw there's a letter online. I've made a video about it, that the Vatican Bank let the New York Fed use the gold that they had with the New York Fed in the 70s to lease that gold to try to control the gold price. So yeah, the Vatican is involved with the bankers. The Vatican let a lot of the Nazis flee Europe after World War II. So yeah, they're all involved. I don't know if you remember, just before the election in 2016, I think it's called the John Smith annual dinner, and all the big, powers that be, business leaders, political leaders, go to this meeting, and there's I think it's the Archbishop of New York or something, a Catholic bigwig. He hosts the dinner, and you had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump sitting next to this guy. So, and at the time, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were like at each other, but at this dinner, yeah, they were like listening to this guy. So yeah, I think the deep state. Difficult to say who they are exactly, but they're in control still, I think. Brent Gray, will gold and silver stocks hold up in a recession? Of course, yeah, they will, especially if gold and silver are going up. And sometimes gold in the early 80s, there was a deep recession in the US. I think there were two, one in 80, 81, and then one in 82. And the mining stocks actually topped a couple of years after gold topped in January of 1980. So yeah, gold and silver stocks can continue to do well in the recession. I think home stake mining was up 500% during the Great Depression in the 1930s. GG6, what is your opinion about European Central Bank agreement ending gold purchase? Yeah, I read the article on Zero Hedge about that. They discontinued. Every 5 years they renewed it. I don't think it's that serious because they hadn't been doing much activity in gold at all for the last few years. They didn't hardly sold any. So I don't think it makes any difference. Yeah, it means they could eventually sell more gold than they would have under the agreement. But the countries that have the gold, I don't see them selling it. Italy and France have had over 2,000 tons for years. I don't see them touching that, nor the Germans. So a lot of people are worried about that. I don't think it's a big deal. I think the agreement ends on September 26th or 27th. I heard someone make a comment, oh, let's see what happens on September 27th. But I don't think anything will happen. It's just that they're not selling any gold. So it's an agreement that doesn't make sense having. I could be wrong, but it doesn't change my view on gold. Water shambles, buying arms is not a good thing. You don't buy fireworks to sit in the cupboard. That's right. I mean, and the politicians, they also the military men, they need to justify their jobs, right? Hopefully there won't be any conflagration or any war. Carlos Soto, do you recommend Glint? I do. I have the Glint card. I have used it. I do recommend it, but I prefer holding my precious metals physically, but it's an option. They hold the gold in a private vault in Switzerland, a non-bank vault. You can take delivery of the gold, but you can also spend it almost instantaneously with your debit card or MasterCard. So it might suit some people. So yeah, I recommend it. Gold money, I've got the gold money card. I think the Glint card is easier to use because you can spend your gold right away. With the gold money, you need to first sell the gold and put it into another currency and load the card. With the Glint card, you have an app and you can load the card to gold, to sterling, US dollar, or euros and spend whatever you want. Go anywhere around the world, you could go and spend your gold. Pablo Pina. Jeff Brown, are they going to buy more gold? They could buy more gold. That could be the other thing as well. They haven't renewed the selling agreement because they're thinking of buying. So I don't think it's all negative for gold. Pablo says, with oil tankers taking hit on the Strait of Hormuz, instigated if by the B states was part of it, wouldn't he go to war, not be pushing for negotiating table? Talk to you. Yeah, I'm not too sure what's happening in the U.S., who's really in charge. I don't know if Trump really wants this war with Iran. I've read things that the U.S., the naval intelligence is very powerful. So not just the CIA. So I've read things that say that the U.S. Navy is trying to trigger something. So we'll have to just wait and see. I mean, I have to wait and see. The thing about the Strait of Hormuz, the narrowest, the strait, the narrowest part is about 21 miles or something. So technically, there's no international waters there because it's Iranian and Omani territorial waters, but there is a corridor for the international ships to go through. So actually, Oman and Iran, they keep order there in this Strait of Hormuz. So I don't think Iran is looking to disrupt anything. I guess we've heard of false flags, right? Tim Kramer says Trump is not a warmonger. That was Bush. Well, Bush actually said when he was campaigning that he wanted to have a humble foreign policy, isolationism. I mean, the way Trump acts about the military, I don't think it's any different. Trump, Obama, or Bush. I just think Trump is trying to placate the people, the Tea Party, the people that were fed up prior to 2016 with what was happening. But if you look at his actions, nothing has changed. He even signed onto the books, the FASB 56, which is allowing the US Congress to basically go dark, to spend money without the public knowing. So I'm not too sure about Trump. All the things he says are great, but has he locked up Hillary Clinton? Has he built a wall? No. So anyway, I think it's all distraction. The debt is increasing. The bubble is even bigger than when Trump said that we had a big fat bubble. Now is a big obese bubble, and a lot of people are going to get hurt when things implode. DMC, would you recommend buying gold miners? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a advisor, but yeah, usually mining stocks outperform the underlying metal, but you need to do your homework about the companies, if they're junior explorations or if they're producers already. There's all kinds. I recommend you go into Sprott Asset Management website or the Tocqueville Fund and look at their mining funds or gold funds and look at their major holdings and maybe get an idea from that. RFGDGD, have you talked about Bank of China being positive towards Bitcoin yet? No, I haven't. Do you mean by Bank of China? Do you mean the People's Bank of China? Because there's Bank of China is a separate bank. It's not the central bank. There's a Bank of China. I haven't heard about that, so I haven't. GGG6. When would you predict that hyperinflation will occur? I made a video recently about that, and I think the conditions for hyperinflation are there. And basically, hyperinflation is the loss of confidence in the currency. It's not because costs are going up. It's because the general public realizes that the currency is worthless and that the debt will never be paid. So what they do is when they get that currency, they want to spend it, and they don't want to keep it. So I think the conditions are there, but it's very difficult to say when it's going to happen. And I quoted someone in this book who was a German professor of law at Harvard and I think Stanford, I'm not sure, but he lived through the hyperinflation in Germany, and it said it happened like a storm, thunder. It just happens, and when people least expect it. So it's difficult to say, but I think we're closer and closer to it, to people losing confidence, especially after 11 years where people expect the initial QE and zero interest rates after the crisis. People, investors and markets, they bought into it because they thought, well, this will help the economy grow again, and they will be able to normalize interest rates. We're going to go back to 5 or 6% interest rates. They're going to sell off their balance sheets, and we're going to go back to normal. But now we know that they can't do that. The ECB is going to cut again. They're going to print again. The Fed's going to cut again and print more. So they will never be able to get out of it. And I think that means we're closer and closer to the hyperinflation. Yeah, Jeff Brown, the Byzantine Empire, yeah, they had a gold standard. Lasted for about 800 years. The Byzantium, the gold coin. Carlos Soto, are those countries buying gold plan on having dual currencies, one fiat, one backed by gold? It's not really dual currency. Maybe they will. Well, it's difficult to say. They could back it by gold, each of their currencies, and the paper money becomes the currency, and the gold becomes what backs. But I'm not too sure. But I think the problem is if you're going to have bilateral trade with other countries, by having other countries having gold, people who deal with that country, they'll be more confident of accepting that paper money. They could set have an international agreement saying that your money supply has to be 50% backed by gold, and it has to be public and transparent. So if countries start printing too much, then other countries are going to be wary of that. And that's the only way it will work if it's a multipolar world. Right now, we have the US running everything, but we know that the dollar or the Federal Reserve note has not much behind it except a lot of air. The other thing about gold that it does balance accounts internationally between nations. And if there is a new agreement, monetary agreement, way to settle things is through gold, not through paper. That's why gold is so important, in my opinion. That's what Jim Sinclair has said as well. So we've only got 100 people here, 32 thumbs up. Zhang Chu says Spanish silver was really useful during Ming China overseas trade, brought great opportunity. Yeah, this other book here that I'm reading, A War in Gold by Kwasi Kwarteng, it talks about how basically the silver that was brought from the New World by the Spanish was a very big thing. It even created inflation in Spain because there's too much of it. Yeah, Jeff Brown, why did Spain go into decline despite all their silver? I would say some gold. Yeah, because they didn't. They spent it. They didn't invest it. Um, yeah, it was too easily. How can I say? Acquired through conquest, and that's why. And I think they got into too many wars as usual, and they spent it. Girl OG, what do you think of the next prime minister puppet? Just what you said there, another puppet, Girl OG. Nothing new. The bankers are still in charge, unfortunately. There is a guy, though, from the ERG, which is a hard Brexit group within the government. His name is Stephen Baker. He's an MP. He's even spoken in Parliament about bringing back sound money. So there is some hope. Google, let's see, Steve Baker, MP. He was offered a cabinet post by Boris Johnson, and he didn't accept it. So because he's not too convinced about Boris Johnson. Hey, Lord Humongous, greetings. Nice to see you. Isabel Bozo, do you think things will unfold as in the mandibles? What can we do to avoid as a society? I think things are unfolding already as a society. All you can do as an individual is protect yourself. Yeah, I don't think you can do much to protect or to change society. It's just live the way you think is right, in my opinion, and protect yourself. And maybe try to wake people up. That's why I do these videos. Aside from following markets and loving markets, financial markets, because I worked in markets for over 20 years, and I just like watching the markets. My purpose is to try to wake people up as well to how flawed and fraudulent our monetary system is. That's all I can do, and that's all you could do that as well. Informing friends, family, or starting your own videos as well. I never thought when I started my YouTube videos in the end of 2015 that I'd have as many people following me. Of course, I wanted to have it, but you just have to stay at it. You have to, you can't give up. Mario, you need an Australian flag. Yeah, I know. I mean, my wife is a bit tired of all the cushions, but I do have here behind me. There's one with all the different flags of the world. So there it is. I'm sure the Australian flag is there. Yeah, Cyrus Shadrazar says, keep using Google and feeding the beast. Yeah, the other day I made a video, and as usual, criticizing central banking and the monetary system. And someone said, oh, you had a UBS advert on it. And I said, well, I don't care. That's good. If UBS is going to pay me to expose the system that they're under, that's a good thing. I'm Korean. When I see the S&P chart at this moment, that is very similar to 2008 chart before the fresh. What about your inspiration? What do you mean by inspiration? What I think about the S&P? Yeah, I think it's totally overvalued. I mean, since 2000, in money terms, in real money terms, or in gold terms, the Dow and the S&P, they're actually down. If you do the Dow gold ratio, it topped around 46 in 1999, 2000, and now it's around 19 or just below 19. I think the stock market is dangerous. Most of the gains have been because of buybacks, and the way big corporations do buybacks is that they issue bonds. They borrow money because it's so cheap. So it's all artificial, the stock market. Lord Humongous, do you see silver spiking next week? It's been doing well relative to gold. I noticed that on Friday it didn't do as well as gold. Who knows if it's going to spike next week? What I've seen in gold and silver is that we're consolidating right now. Silver has been a bit more on a tear than gold, but it's difficult to say. It could. I've looked at some charts that people have made about the seasonality of gold going back 40 or 50 years, and usually it's a very good time from the end of July to the end of the year for gold. So yeah, we're right, we're on the 28th of July. So even though we are near the highs for the year, the season wise, we're entering a really good period for precious metals. So you could be right. Isabel Bozo, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Well, I agree, but I look at silver and gold more as savings, as money. But yeah, if you think there's opportunity to get more returns through some kind of investment, you should do it. I'm not going to tell you what you should do, but the other thing I tell people, investing is also about investing in yourself, in your family. It's not just looking at the stock market and buying a company because you think it's good. You could invest in yourself, spending some money to learn a new skill or buy something that you need to improve your skill or help your family. Yeah. Lord Humongous, trading options for the first time. Well, it could be a good time to start trading options. I mean, volatility has been killed, but if things get, how can I say, difficult for the system, yeah, I've known times when volatility is so high that it doesn't matter if the market goes up and down, your put or your call goes up in value because of the volatility. So we're not there yet. Taku Gold Stacker, I pay my ex-wife in gold. Wow. You should pay her in fiat. Damien Wright, new Bretton Woods coming, question mark. Yeah, there was an article, I think just yesterday on Zero Hedge about Bretton Woods being finished. But Bretton Woods was finished in 1971 and 73 when we went off fixed exchange rates. So we've had a non-system for the last 50 years almost. So we do need some kind of agreement amongst the biggest countries, nations in the world, monetary agreement. Because if we don't have an agreement, you're going to keep getting all these trade deficits, current account surpluses. You're going to get problems. People need to agree on a standard where they can trade fairly with each other. And it's got to be paid properly, not with printed money. Unfortunately, we've had the IMF and the US forcing this system onto the world. Yes, the Fed will cut this week. I think they'll cut by 25. The question is whether they'll cut by 25 or maybe 50. I think it's going to be 25 basis points. Yes, Shrek, the world is broke. Basically, what that means is that we've spent the future, because that's what that means. You're consuming today what you haven't produced yet. So that's going to end in tears because that can't keep going. And so what that will mean is that for many years we'll have to lower our expectations and our standard of living because we're living on we've borrowed the future. Jeff Brown, surely Russia and China know about price manipulation, so why don't they speak out about it? I think it's because it suits them because they don't care about the price too much. Sovereign countries, they care about having the gold. So if it's going to be cheaper for them to add on to it, the better. Yeah, I think the deputy foreign minister, I think his name of Russia is Ryabakov. I'm not sure. But he was in Caracas recently at this non-aligned movement. And I think he was at one of the conferences that GATA, Gold Antitrust Action Committee, organized in 2006. I think it was at Dawson City. So Bill Murphy invited this Russian guy. So yeah, I think they know about the manipulation for definite. What do I think about Boris Johnson? Not much. I don't care about politicians, really. I wish we had less politicians. I wish people would expect less from politicians and that we'd have small government. So I think he's just a clown. As usual, he's a puppet. 1929 will happen again. Yeah, I mean, this is what the system is set up to do. The central banking system is a pump and dump to try to extract wealth from the public. So yeah, it will crash again, the stock market. It might be even worse than 1929. Damien Wright, in Australia, used pre-decimal pound, shilling, and pence. The shilling and pence were silver. There's no reason we can't. Yeah, I know. I think Australia changed to, was it in the late 60s? I think they changed to dollars and cents. Who do you think would be able to end the Fed? I love Jalala asks. Well, the only people that can end the Fed is the United States Congress, because the Federal Reserve was created by the Federal Reserve Act. So they could pass an act to abolish the Federal Reserve. They could do it. Yes, Lord Humongous, I hate any kind of ETFs. I think ETFs is for people who are lazy, who can't be bothered to do their homework and buy the real asset. There's nothing behind SLV or GLD, just paper. It's just like the futures. Yeah, it was around that time, TD, the Aussie. I have some Australian shillings, and they're also florins, I think they're called, from the 40s and 50s. And I think they were sterling silver at that time. Bank fees on checking accounts, a reason to print more. Not too sure about that. We don't really use checks anymore here in the UK, so we don't really have checking accounts. They're all current accounts. So I don't remember the last time I wrote a check, maybe a few years ago. All right. So yeah, the title of the live stream, of course, is about whether China has learned a lesson from 1,000 years ago. I think they have. They know that having paper currency is convenient, but at the same time, it can lead to abuse. And it always does. That's what always happens. Eventually, politicians and the public want the inflation, and basically, the inflation is just is a fraud. It's basically saying that a piece of paper is actually backed by something, because that's what paper money is just a receipt for gold and silver. I've spoken about the analogy of if you go for dinner in a cold place in the winter, and you're wearing your coat, and you take your coat off and you leave it at the reception in the cloakroom. They give you a ticket, let's say number 5. And then when you finish dinner, you take that ticket back and they should give you a coat. And that's what paper money is. It's just a receipt for your money, gold or silver. So, and it's amazing. I think the reason why people accept it is because people have been dumbed down. They don't teach the real nature of money and what it is in schools. So that's why they can get away with people accepting pieces of paper as money. Danny Djokovic says housing in New York City is dropping. It's definitely a buyer's market. I feel the prices will keep dropping. Yeah, I just read an article that here in London, in Greenwich, which is a borough of London, that they didn't talk about prices dropping, but they're saying that sales have dropped a lot in the last 2-3 years. Just gold. You need to do your homework about the miners. I'm not here to advise which miners to buy, but yeah, they will. Let's say if gold goes up 50%, miners will probably go up 200 to 300, 400, depending on the company. But it's not the same thing as holding precious metals, of course. Lord Humongous, I think, yeah, my interview is on Wednesday with Lynette Zhang. GG6. Yeah, the thing about the Fort Knox bars is that they're 90% gold, because they're all the melted coins that from the Gold Confiscation Act of 1933, or it wasn't an act, it was the executive order to confiscate gold. And American gold, the coins that circulated were 90%. So they just melted that, and it's 90%. But in the bullion market, 999 gold is what is accepted. Yeah, I love Jella says gold is more liquid than any other asset class. That's true. You can exchange gold for fiat currencies anywhere around the world and people will accept it. Lord Humongous says he stole the Nazi gold. Well, the Nazis stole the gold from the countries they invaded in Europe, but then when they lost, where did that gold go? It's probably in the New York banks, London banks. I'm not sure. Some of it is back in Germany as well. Yeah, Damien, I think what they're doing, the governments, they're keeping interest rates very low, almost at zero, in some cases negative, even though the cost of living and their inflation measures are still high. And I think they're also fudged. And what that does, they're trying to write off their debt, because governments are the biggest debtors. So they want to make, and debt nowadays is what backs the fiat currency. So that's why in the UK we have CPI or RPI, which is a measure of inflation, running at 4 or 5%, but interest rates are like almost zero. So that's called financial repression. They did that during World War II and just after World War II as well. But eventually, they have to pay for that, and that's what high interest rates are. Right now, we still don't have high interest rates, but eventually, we'll have to pay for that. But the people who lose out, who keep fiat currency or in the bank, they're the ones who lose out because that money becomes worth less and less. It's a way to default, not to technically default, but de facto default, to make that money worth less. TD, as I just said, they're doing a debt jubilee as we speak. Here they've done it. They're going to do it in the US, devaluing the dollar. They can only devalue it versus gold because the dollar is the reserve currency. That's how they do the jubilee, because creditors be wiped out. I mean, creditors here in the UK, they've lost more than half of the purchasing power of their pounds. If you had 100,000 pounds in the bank 10 years ago, now you buy probably half of what you could back then, especially gold. So yeah, we're already having a debt jubilee, but they could have one as well, overt one. I think that what we're having is a covert jubilee. Icaboni Mark, why a debt jubilee? Why can't we just pay our debts? Well, because the debts are too great. I think governments, especially, and even people, have taken on too much debt. The reason they're able to service that debt is that interest rates are still being kept artificially low because central banks are creating more debt to keep interest rates low. And how does that happen? Well, by creating more debt, they buy more debt, and it's a complete Ponzi. Overt jubilee would just be like someone comes and a politician says, we're going to write off all the student debt. That's overt. That's what it is. Or like Russia, they defaulted on their debt 20 years ago. The Russian debt default, that's overt. You could, the U.S. government could overnight say, all the national debt is written off, but that would mean the whole system would implode. The way to keep the system going is just to write off the value of the debt, i.e. inflation. Yeah, Isabel, I think gold has underperformed real estate, so I think it will outperform real estate. I don't know NASDAQ, how much gold the Catholic Church has, probably a lot. They also own a lot of real estate. Okay, a few more questions and then I'll call it a day. I've been here almost an hour now, 54 minutes. Lord Humongous says SLV next week. What's going on next week, Lord Humongous, with SLV? Isabel, thank you for the feedback. Please call me Suzerain. Okay. Oh, big move. You mean silver? Why SLV? I thought you didn't hold ETFs, Lord Humongous. You traitor. SLV, that's the ticker for ETF. You should put XAG, Lord Humongous. Next reserve currency, gold. Are you trading options on SOE? Okay. NASDAQ, I think a 25 basis point cut would not really affect things that much in the markets because it's pretty much priced in. That's how markets work. But if they were to cut by 50 basis points, gold could move a lot higher, in my opinion. But you never know in the short term. All right. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. I know I usually do this live stream a little later, but just wanted to let you know that I'm doing an interview today. I'm with Mike from Rethinking the Dollar. He contacted me the other day. He's going to call me to have a chat with him. He's going to publish that interview on Silver Doctors. So I'll be talking to him in about 4 hours with Mike Manuel from Rethinking the Dollar. He used to be a professional basketball player, I think, in Europe and South America. So there you go. I wish you all a great rest of the weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.